We use AI all the time as far as creative direction and iteration. The reality is creators have become far more important in paid media. And in this new world of interest media, the lines are blurring and creative becomes very important. So making data-driven decisions within creative is almost critical for some of these agencies to survive and retain business.
Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to AI in Motion. My name's Jason Stapleton, and this is the only show, really, that talks to business owners and the practical ways that they are using AI inside of their business to focus more on growth and revenue and less time on all the drudgery and the mindless things that have to get done every single day inside of a business. My guest today is Andrew Presser. He is the co-founder and COO of Newform. And these guys, the reason I want to talk to Andrew is because they're doing some pretty cool stuff with short form ads, lo-fi ads specifically, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And the ability to do that at scale and to iterate at scale in order to get better results. And so not only is he using AI under the hood to help with all of this and has developed some tools for it, but more importantly, there are very few people on the planet that we can talk to who really know more about this type of advertising than Andrew does. So Andrew, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Yeah. So let's start out. Let's talk a little bit about lo-fi content. This is a term that I'd heard before, but in order to really check and make sure I had it right, I had to go look it up and say, what do they mean by lo-fi content? Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how when you refer to that, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, for sure. So when we think about lo-fi content, I mean, it's just low fidelity content. These are ads you probably saw rise in popularity on the backs of what we call interest media, right? And so interest media, everyone's talking about social media. What we define as interest media is platforms like Reels, TikTok, and anything that's like an interest graph-based ad network, right? And what you saw with these platforms is they got really good at understanding users with collaborative filtering. Meaning Jason and I might like sports cars. Jason likes a video of a Porsche 911. They serve that to me. Now that deeply changes kind of the graph and the volume of content that can be served to a lot of users, right? And so you can connect with users around the world, and it also enables for these ad networks that we'll probably get into later to be more effective. The problem with that, or the problem with how that affects advertising, is the platforms from an organic level become deeply, deeply personal and deeply authentic, right? As you start kind of every user session is action, right? Even passive signals like watch through or view through were impossible before, right? Like imagine you're scrolling on, what was formerly Twitter. Twitter has no idea what you're actually liking or engaging with. Even if you like the post, they don't know too much about how you thought, how you interacted with, watch that post or something else. And so TikTok or Instagram, Reels, et cetera, and that's why all these platforms are pushing this placement, is because it allows them to deeply understand the user, which in turn makes that content much more authentic, which then makes it much more difficult or nuanced for an advertiser to actually activate, a user. If you actually go on Instagram or TikTok and you scroll and you look at the ads, the comments within those ads are calling out, there's I won't say on the show, but a very funny kind of classic cottage kind of comment that they comment on every ad. So it's very easy to see what the ad is. And what we found is that like going the opposite way of instead of going, high production, kind of ad based, classic ad, structures, actually doing things that, seem like, how did this make it past compliance? How did this make it past like brand? And, was this like, just a guy with his phone that made a video? And we've seen look at any top advertiser, right? You can go to the ads library, it's public information. Acorns, it's not Dwayne The Rock Johnson that's the number one ad. It's some guy throwing change in a cup holder, right? And so I long-winded, but to kind of pin the point, lo-fi content is what we consider authentic advertising.
Yeah, could you just kind of sum that up for me in I guess in non-advertiser speak, because what I heard you say, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, is that just having an ad of a guy whipping out a phone is somehow more appealing to the end user who's watching that ad and sort of driving clicks, and that helps the platform better understand who to serve this to. Because when you talk about activation and activity on the platform, I think that, especially for me, I've been at this 18 years. That sort of contextually, can you help just the audience understand that better in just a kind of like a couple sentences?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think the basic premise is the social media has become much more authentic to the user, right? The content that's being served is much more authentic, which means ads that are being served stand out much deeper or much more obviously.
Oh, I see.
And so,
Okay.
and so the more authentic you build, and from a paid media perspective, right? The more authentic you build content or those ads, in line with like with the other content, you want your ads to look like a chameleon in the page, right? So they don't stand
Yeah.
out like a sore thumb. So
And so that's why the lo-fi stuff is doing better. Because as I said, I've been in online marketing for a lot of years, and I've seen it go from, I mean, when I got started, YouTube had just been purchased by Google, and Facebook had like just opened up to everybody, and social media wasn't really a thing. And I started posting videos that I recorded myself into old chat forums. Like that's how freaking old I am. And I've seen it go from being really low quality video content all the way to it swings up, and now the only thing that worked was really high quality stuff, really like professionally produced, and now it's kind of swung back the other way, and now it seems like the more intimate you can be with the end user when you're putting ads in front of them, the higher that conversion is that doing what you're saying is that's doing a better job, that sort of content, the algorithm is picking up on that, and or is it the other way, is that the user is seeing that content because it's so customized and tailored to them that it's just converting better, or is the algorithm actually picking up on the fact that, hey, this actually converts a lot better?
yeah, yeah, it's a bit of both, right? And that's the beauty of say TikTok, where TikTok was the first platform that basically no matter if who you are and what you posted, you're guaranteed for somebody else to see that piece of content,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's kind of like this when you think of the algorithm, right? It's really this ramp curve where that first like and view and engagement is super critical, and the early innings of that piece of content are very critical, right? And so that kind of sends it to another kind of subset of testing demographic for that piece of content. And then if it graduates from there and beats, kind of other pieces of content in that same ranking that were sent to that same user, it's going to graduate to the
Yeah.
next larger group, right? And so that's how you can think about organic. And in the same way, instead of views, right, advertisers are rewarded with CPMs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll kind of, instead of views, in theory, right, the TikTok ad network or the Meta ad network is basically rewarding you in CPMs rather than views.
Got it. So then, how are you guys approaching? First of all, are you guys using any AI generated content? Because it sounds like with lo-fi you're not, but are you using any of that sort of like AI generated content to test against the other like actual human content?
Yeah, it's a question we get all the time. We actually wrote a paper on this, and our thesis is simply when posting organic content, the opportunity cost is basically the cost of the content, meaning every piece of content you make, in theory, will get a view, and the EV or like the minimum value that you could get out of posting a piece of content is zero minus your cost of creation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, in theory, if AI is able to bring that cost of creation down to near zero, your opportunity cost is near zero. But with paid media, your EV is not positive, right? Because you have to put ad dollars behind it. And so what we've seen in running ads for, dozens of companies, is that like given the power law dynamics of interest graph kind of media versus social media, one in maybe 30 or one in 20 pieces of content is going to be a standout winner
Mm-hmm.
that'll be able to scale. And if that's the case, then any opportunity cost you have on ad efficacy rather than the cost of the creation of the ad is actually what's going to cost you a lot more money. And so what we see is just humans make better ads, right? And if they make even 1% better ads, then you're losing a lot more than 1%,
Are
if
you
you
saying
scale that
that
ad.
AI is nowhere involved in any part of that process, or are you just saying that the human touch and the human engagement is the thing that makes the difference?
Yeah, I think that the outward execution of the human is what makes the difference. We use AI all the time as far as creative direction and iteration. The reality is, creators have become, whether they like it or not, creators have become far more important in paid media, right? And if you speak to any agency, they're recognizing that there's now a blurring line between media and creative. It used to be the cottage industry of advertising. you had these two businesses that were far from each other that had to work together out of necessity. Media agencies and creative agencies. They were very different business models. And in this new world of interest media, the lines are blurring and creative becomes really important. So making data-driven decisions within creative is, I don't even know if important is a strong enough word. It's almost critical for some of these agencies to survive and retain business. So I know that's long-winded. The way that we actually use kind of AI is actually extracting creative insights from kind of the creatives that we're running and making, and allowing actually the creator, not necessarily the media buyer, to have a visibility in that ad data and understand like the decisions that they're making on the creative level, how that actually drives revenue or ROAS, whatever that the business is targeting from like a media side of things.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So I want to present a scenario to you, and this is something that I have talked about, and it's also something that I've seen a lot of other people talk about. But when it comes to organic, and I know that you guys are really involved on the paid side, but obviously you guys understand organic as well. When you're dealing with AI generated content, especially when we look at things like VO3, and as we're getting so much closer to, I think of there's a company out there, I think it's called Captions, that has artificial people that look very close to real people. And it's still not quite there, but we're so close to where you're going to have the influencer era of where I build up my own brand and I put that out, and now people come and give me money to promote their stuff. The companies themselves will be able to stand up hundreds or thousands of these influencers. And as you said, as the cost of creating content on the free side, on the organic side, gets close to zero with AI content, we could potentially see on Instagram alone where there's somewhere between 1 million and 5 million reels a day, right? So 30, 40 million reels a month. That could go to 30, 40 million reels an hour, right? It's conceivable to think of a world like that. There are a ton of people who are listening to this podcast who have built businesses or who heavily rely on organic reach in order to make money and to promote themselves and to drive traffic back to their companies. As this becomes more of a regular course of business, especially people who are either on the very low end and don't have a lot of capital, or large companies who can do this at scale, are we going to lose organic reach? And is everything then going to have to push to paid in order for us to be able to operate like it was before social media?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the answer is no, but it's going to change a lot. And there's a few kind of areas we can focus on here, but I think that like most importantly, we're going to see a massive niche down. We're already seeing this. There's a massive niche down in audiences and communities, right? So the deeper you go, the less surface level you are. I mean, even this podcast is a great example of like, a community and content that, say, a few years ago was probably not kind of feasible or would have gotten the kind of the demand or reach otherwise, right? And so we're likely going to see just a deeper dive in when it comes to that community or that niche. I think that like actually organic growth in content might take a bit of a playbook from actually B2B, in the sense that like as you reach kind of scale in B2B, it's far less about kind of that next direct sale and more about like, can you build a kind of awareness and education of your audience and then activate when the signals are right. So what we kind of, with our clients, one thing that we're really focused on is when it comes to organic content, far more of it is less performance driven on like, how did this kind of piece of creative, attract views or whatever. And more, is it actually good? Like fundamentally, is it good content that's educating the user about our product, and is it entertaining, and does it further our brand? Right? Because what we're going to see, kind of Jason, to your point, is we're going to see a proliferation of content come onto these platforms, and I think faster than the platforms can regulate, right? And filter that out. And assuming we understand how the algorithm works, and the way that I think it does, what that'll mean is that power law distribution is just going to shift a bit more. Of course, consumption will increase, right? But not at the pace at which production will. And so as that power law shifts, viral content will become, I think, far less. It'll reach far less valuable users, and it'll convert far less than it used to. And also, I'd imagine that to further the interest of some of these platforms, it will call it very viral, content will serve kind of, far less valuable users, preserving kind of the ad dollars that are targeting those valuable users on the platform.
Okay, so what I heard you say was that people who are currently using organic traffic in order to drive people back to their business and to drive sales, as things the AI starts to proliferate and become a larger portion of the, because we've had a disparity for a while, right, where supply was the problem, not demand. But we can very easily see a world in the next 12 to 18 months where that flips on its head. And now there's so much more supply than there is demand. And what I heard you say is that the way you should think about organic content moving forward is not really about how much reach did it get or how many clicks did it get, but really, did it fundamentally deepen the relationship that you have with potential buyers? And then using paid advertising as a way to really promote and direct those people when the timing is right to make the buying decision. Is
Right.
that pretty close? Okay.
And whether it's paid media or not, it could be a cold email, it could be whatever kind of signal that is on that activation. But organic as a standalone activation, kind of awareness and activation channel, I think is going to change a lot.
Wow. So is there any value in your mind of somebody who's brand new, maybe standing up a business in pushing organic content if in 12 months that's going to be a lot less valuable to them? I mean, because that's been the way a lot of brands have done it for the last 8, 10 years.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. We sit and we look at AI and the capabilities with these products, and it's almost the way you look at the iPhone, right? And the ability to shoot video, or Facebook, the ability to kind of get an ad or a video in front of a lot of people. The reality is that when each advent of technology, when it comes to media, it doesn't necessarily mean that content's going to be good,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so just because it's going to increase tenfold or a hundredfold, it does raise the bar for content, but it also means that there's with competition also comes opportunity, if you're able to stand out and make good content in a niche that's underserved.
Yeah.
And it
Absolutely.
and it
Okay.
also those, I mean, the last to put a pin on it, Jason, is like the other thing for those. It's actually to me more exciting, where like it would otherwise take a film crew and a production shoot or whatever for a B2B marketer to go and do make a LinkedIn ad or whatever. And you can leverage AI and they can run it both organically or paid and do a blend, but making sure that that content is authentic to that audience.
Yeah, yeah, very well said. Let's dive in a little bit into how you guys are using AI, and I want to talk about Willbot too because I think that's a really interesting piece of software for especially for those companies that are doing a lot of advertising and want to be able to measure and iterate. But can you just show everybody kind of a process that you're using inside of the company that incorporates artificial intelligence in order to help you guys, and they can get kind of wrap their head around, especially those who are new. Hey, how can I start implementing today? And I'll just turn it over to you and let you run with it however you want.
For sure, for sure. I'll share my screen real quick if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Um, when it comes to the growth of the business, I was in the same way that you can think about kind of paid media or paid social as an ad network, or you think of these ad networks. A lot of our business has been grown through cold email, which is another way to think of like an ad network. But the revolution we've seen in call it like visual content over the last couple of years, we've seen in the ease of sending cold emails over the last 5 years, right? And so a lot of inboxes are flooded, and the reality is that like cold email as a growth channel for us to acquire clients is still our strongest channel. And it's not
Really?
because, yeah, it accounts for over 40% of the business. And a lot of that has to come down to, I think, using AI where appropriate, and then also kind of taking a step back where not. And it's been a lot of strong up and downs, and kind of, testing to figure that out.
Hmm.
One thing I'll show you here, and this was our first this was a few years ago, where we started using basically Clay with some of their early AI stuff, and also building webhooks to
Now
start to.
what's I'm sorry to interrupt you because but what is clay? I know most of the audience won't even know what that is.
Yeah, think if ChatGPT and any AI or Apollo or any tool you use in your current business go to market would kind of work together within, say, a Google Sheet.
Got it.
I don't work for Clay, but I'm a strong spokesperson of the product. Very intuitive. I'm not a developer, and so it's quite intuitive. And so what it allowed at least for us, is pulling in these signals I was talking. I mentioned these signals and the organic content, but signals are all around us, right? For our business, a strong signal was that we were able to, or like identifying if an advertiser is beginning to run TikTok ads, right? Well, it's very personal for us to then go send that contact an email and say, saw you were scaling on TikTok, saw your ads, even if we hadn't, right? And then go and activate them. And so what we did is we built a scraper that would go in. We'd use AI to kind of classify the product category, right? When it comes to like, we don't work with beauty and fashion brands, that sort of thing. Pull all of those advertisers, and also kind of, instead of having to do a ton of fancy formulas, just kind of, normalize our company domains and that sort of thing. And then from there, we're basically able to send that to other sheets
Wait,
to then find contacts.
how are you able to scrape and to know who's recently started running ads? Is that just publicly available if you know where to look?
Yeah, Facebook ad library, LinkedIn ad library. They're all kind of very publicly available. The one we use the most would be PP ads. It's a platform that allows, it kind of aggregates them all,
Oh, cool.
and you can kind of go really deep. Yeah, yeah, I can pull it up right here, but you can basically see anything anyone's running ever, right? And you can kind of approximate the spend and scale based upon kind of like rates and views, and you can kind of back out CPMs and how much they're spending accordingly.
So you're kind of guessing, you bring up all these new companies that have started running ads and you sort of guesstimate which ones you think are doing enough volume that they might make good clients of yours.
Exactly,
Got it.
exactly. And that's just one way. The other was, we've built a bunch of scrapers across both, Meta, TikTok, as well as like, CTV. Hey, saw
Mhm.
your ad on CTV or linear, whatever, think we could scale it on
Got it.
Facebook or whatever.
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, some of the other workflows that were like really interesting were like in the same way of like, taking, we have a dedicated kind of go-to-market engineering team, but even if you don't have like a lot of like dedicated resources, one kind of big bottleneck, a lot of people get clients at conferences, but they often restrict you to a very clunky app. They might tell you the people attending that app or that conference, but they're not going to actually give you that contact information. So one thing, we did very rudimentary early on is actually just taking screenshots of that app, right? You can feed that all now to these vision models. They'll be able to put that into a nice CSV file. You can upload it back to Clay. And then from Clay, you'd be able to go in and kind of enrich that company, use some simple AI prompts to figure out their LinkedIn, and scrapers are built in here to like figure out their LinkedIn profiles, classify those companies, and then validate the email, send them an email with a very personal message.
This is kind
Um,
of interesting. So what you're again, I'm just going to clarify for my purposes. What you're doing is you're going to an event and where you know a ton of your potential prospects will be, clients will be, and they're giving you a small amount of information, maybe name of the company and the person who attended, but you don't really have much other than that. And then you bring it into something like Clay that also has, the ability to use artificial intelligence, and you say, hey, go and expand on this. See if you can find a LinkedIn profile, find all of this other information about them, so that when then we can sort of go through and classify who among these attendees are the best people that we should be reaching out to. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we kind of string together a bunch of tools, sometimes haphazardly, sometimes very intently, right? And where, there are some hallucinations, right? And so you need to kind of be careful. I think the worst is, in our opinion, kind of, this goes back to the earlier piece of the conversation, is that like the places that a human should play are on kind of the initial direction and the end output. Meaning, when it comes to cold emailing, the human should play very strongly within the copy, and also figuring out kind of the direction in which we should be searching for opportunities. But other than that, let the AI do the rest, right? All these old workflows, you can either automate entirely with agents, or string together AI assisted workflows. So that's a piece on how we kind of go after kind of filtering and finding companies. I mean, this is another similar workflow where I asked for, on this product, Exa AI, think again, Google Sheets meets ChatGPT or Perplexity. I was able to go and just search it for companies that had, at least raised in the past, 10 million in the past couple of years. They're direct to consumer kind of software companies and their AI apps. And then even though sometimes AI again isn't perfect, so I actually take this and I have AI play against AI, where I'll take this Google sheet or this sheet, export it, send it to Perplexity, tell it it's an expert at, or send it to GPT or whatever, tell it it's an expert at go to market and understanding paid media, and say rank these companies best to worst on those that you think are primed to run ads, right? Because they'd be a good client for us, and then we'd kill basically the bottom half of that list or the bottom 75% of that list to get really, really making sure that we're hitting the kind of the strongest signal
Yeah, and
companies.
at scale with with I could see with maybe thousands of companies or potential connections in a even a local area, that would be extremely helpful. That you wouldn't have to go through and sort of try and look at every single one of them. And I think number one, I like this because it's something that any business at any scale who's trying to identify ideal prospects and then sort of classify and rank them can do without a ton of technical expertise. Like I said, there's so many of these folks that I talk to who are skilled coders and developers, and the stuff that they're doing is beyond anybody's capacity as I guess as a regular business owner. But that's something that should get the wheels turning in your head if you're a business owner. Like, hey, how can I optimize? I'm going to this big conference. I have I'm helping to develop some software in San Jose right now, and we're doing a lot of conferences, a lot of these big events where there's a lot of manufacturers and producers there, and trying to figure out how do we use the names and the email addresses, the companies that are there, so that we can then reach out to them. And what you just showed me is something that I'm definitely going to take back to them and say, hey, we should consider doing this because it'll help us. Because some of these places have thousands of these people, these companies that are coming to them. Really valuable stuff. So, talk me through how. So, you guys have a product called Willbot, and this is something that I think you guys started by building it internally first, and now is it publicly available now? Can people go and like use it themselves?
It is publicly available. We kind of will, onboard clients case by case, but yeah, we're, taking calls, walking people through the product and seeing if it makes sense for them for sure.
Yeah. But this was foundationally how you guys were able and are able to iterate so quickly on the content that you're creating. And I think from the website, it says you guys are doing 2,500 ads a month. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all made by humans. And so I'm happy to kind of give some insights as to the product. And, although we have kind of a full engineering team that to be clear, Jason, we started as a bootstrapped, performance marketing agency, like probably many people that listen to this are. And we saw the writing on the wall that, AI and these workflows would become a necessity for our survival. And so we started taking excess cash to start, we brought on our third co-founder and CTO to start kind of tinkering with these low level kind of more at the time table stakes or now table stakes kind of products that at the time were very revolutionary. For example, what if ChatGPT had all of the context of all of the ad scripts that you've ever made, right? And so the idea was that we'd start with like the lowest common denominator of data integration and stakes, right? And then we'd start building from there, and that's led us to the product we have now, which I'm happy to show.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Because I watched the little demo that you had on the website, and I mean, it makes me wonder. I want to show it to everybody, and then let me ask a couple of questions. It makes me wonder if anybody is going to be able to operate in a paid ad space without some sort of technology like this and survive in the future. Whether they're building it themselves or whether they're going to a company like yours and leasing it from them. This just seems like it's the future, whether you want to accept it or not. But show them what it is first, so everybody understands.
For sure, for sure. And we think that a product, either our product or one like it, is kind of the missing link in what I was alluding to earlier, which is creative becoming inseparable from media and the media agency. The world of a media agency and a creative agency will probably not be reality in a number of years, right? Where media has where creative has such an outsized impact on media performance. And so again, what started as a kind of a Frankenstein of GPT and our scripts and ad data has become a full-fledged product of how can a creator ask questions about the ads that they make and how that drives performance for the client. In this case, I'm looking at our web app, and I'll show you kind of what we do on Slack as well. But in this demo account, just as we started the pod, I asked it, ask the agent, top hooks, but for super app this week. And by hook, I mean like, the first 3 seconds, first few seconds of an ad, what's kind of captivating and engaging an audience. And it spit out a full breakdown of kind of both on a visual and auditory level, like the hook themes and the hooks by number of ads. And I could kind of double click on and really drive down to a performance level on CPA or, whatever it is. But it's a dynamic kind of, imagine if, say, GPT had context always to all of your ad data and was able to watch and listen to them.
Yeah.
And so we built this out of necessity internally, and then out of demand externally started selling it and implementing it with other partners. And it's kind of the ultimate lead magnet for our agency business. So
That's right. It probably is a nice little lead magnet. Yeah. But
Yeah.
so how does it work? Does it you connect through an API and just feed it all of that data?
Yeah, for sure. So we
Okay.
connect across all of, we basically connect across all of the ad providers. We started with the easiest, right, which was TikTok. And then we went from TikTok to Meta and Meta to Google. And now like going to DSPs and CTV as needed, right? But the idea is like connect via API to get the kind of real-time ad data, and then connect wherever like our clients have their data lake or their analytics environment, and then pin, be able to pin context to the client and to that agent such that, hey, the client defines, some event as this, right? And so that AI constantly knows to reference back to that pinned context. The AI we've built is not much more magical than any other kind of existing one out there. In fact, this is built on the back of like, Anthropic and Gemini, right? But the only thing that makes it special is the integrations and the context, right? Like that's what makes it powerful.
No, it's funny because we were talking in the last episode, we were talking about the importance of context today, and that's the real struggle, is how the importance of kind of owning your own data so that when you're making the connections that the AI has all of the context it needs. Can this system, can it make assumptions or outside of a question that you might ask it? So if you say, hey, what was the highest performing ad for me last week? Obviously, it can go and figure out what that is. Can it then do like an analysis and say, why was this? And is that analysis accurate?
For sure. It doesn't have access. I'm going to ask it to come up with some other, some new scripts based upon it. It's not going to have access to outsized, to data outside or externally, right? And so, we work with a golf app, and it's not going to know Rory won the Masters, right?
Right.
You're going to have to feed it that context in the sense that, like, it's not going to go scrape the web. And we do that to kind of make sure that we're restricting different types of influence on very kind of context driven and client specific decisions, because making sure that we get these things right is so critical.
Well, it begs the question again then, that if you've had enough data, if it had access to enough history and had the ability to go back and look at all of that, you could see a world where one of these big internet companies, Instagram or Meta or whatever, could go out and create something kind of similar, but instead of having just the assets that you've got, they've got literally everybody's from every single from every industry, and then can sort of sell that back to you. And what that's going to do is just not only is everything going to get a lot more addictive, but then you've got a question of, man, how do you create? Right now, you have competitive advantage with something like this. But I can again envision a world where you only have a narrow window of time to execute on that competitive advantage, because like most things, eventually it's going to go away. Like when we used to get Facebook ads for 3 cents a click.
For sure. For sure. The beautiful thing though is, Jason, is that even though they are little walled gardens, they're their own little walled gardens, and they don't have access to the other little walled gardens, right? And so what that means is that while that's true, Google Analytics or Facebook's Analytics or whatever that is, even if our belief is that Facebook, you listened to Zuckerberg talk, but I don't know, 2 weeks ago, how Meta will become the ultimate business results machine, meaning you put in objective, basically your company and the objective,
Mm-hmm.
and it spits out a result, creative or not, and the creative can be optional, right? Um, and so, like we do think that advertisers will be continue to be restricted as far as what they're able to do when it comes to audiences and targeting, et cetera. Like you see all these platforms pushing these very AI based kind of ad network features like Advantage Plus, like Google PMax, like whatever TikTok's just rolled out, right? And so the idea is that these platforms will probably restrict you much more as an advertiser and what you're able to control. Instead, it's more of this like programmatic black box, right? Where they know best, right?
Yeah.
And so that is scary, but it's also kind of reassuring knowing that ultimately at the end of the day, the agency or advertiser is the one with the full context and the full picture, right?
Yeah.
And so it actually, like, I think it makes a stronger case for agencies and the importance of agencies is that they're going to be the ones to connect the dots between platforms, between medium, between all of that.
No, and we've kind of gone that way already. Like I was running ads on Facebook a couple of years ago, or maybe a year, I don't remember, a couple of years ago. I'm older, so it's all starts to run together. But it was actually better not to try and segment at all. Like you just say, hey, Facebook knows this audience better than me. It's going to know who's going to be attracted to this. Just show it to whoever you think. And over time, it optimized itself into outperforming any sort of like sub conditions I might have put on it. And we may get to that point, but to that point, what would you say to say somebody's running a small company of maybe 20 people, they've got one or two marketing people on staff, and they want to start like integrating AI into part of that marketing effort. Where do they start? What do you recommend that they sort of try and autonomize or optimize for first in AI?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that being a co-pilot is probably the lowest hanging fruit and the most impactful. Meaning, most of these ad platform or these AI platforms can watch and listen to video, or can obviously read natural language quite well. And so giving it that up, coaching it as to who it is, right? Like you are the machine learning embodiment of Gary V. Here are 10 scripts I've written. Go and, have at it, right? Here's some stuff. Here's some tests I've run. Walk me through this play by play. Just taking the conscious effort to embrace it into the workflow rather than try to hide away from it is like in my opinion, the best recommendation. Um, yeah, staying away from because if what I'm saying holds true, it's really a company thesis. Looking at the sexy shiny object of generating ads and then running them and seeing that my ads aren't working on Meta, my company can't scale, is probably the wrong way to look at it, right? Make those ads yourself as a founder. Make those ads as get in. They always talk about founder mode, and I think a piece of that is just getting out there, getting on camera, and taking your iPhone to your face, right?
Yeah,
Talking about that
absolutely.
journey and make a lot of it, right? Make
Mhm.
a lot of it, but use AI as a co-pilot, not the delivery vehicle.
I that's a great way to end the show because I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that especially as AI agents and workflows become a bigger part of our all of our processes in the business, that having that human component, like you said, on the front end and on the back end is still going to be critical, at least for the next few years. I mean, who knows after that? This stuff's changing so fast. But at least for now, I think that's great advice on how to start. But how does everybody find you, Andrew? If they are interested, somebody wants to talk to you about what you guys got going on, where do they go?
Yeah, Andrew at newform.ai is my email, and newform.ai, newform.com. Yeah, we have kind of book a call buttons everywhere, so it's probably
Perfect.
the easiest.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate you, Jason. Thank you
Yeah,
so
you
much.
bet. Well, all right, that's our show. Hey, before you go, do a couple things for me. You made it this far, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Not only does it make me feel really good, but it also ensures that I get to keep doing this show, which is super fun for me. So if you'll do those two things, I'll greatly appreciate it. And then, hey, If anything that you heard today got you excited about how to implement AI into your business, but you're looking for a really simple way to do it that doesn't require any coding or heavy tech, then I highly recommend that you go download a free trial of Motion. It is a fantastic app integrating AI and notes and scheduling in order to help you keep your entire team dialed in and ready to go. And they're even releasing new AI agents that are going to help do a lot of the work for you. And because they've got context, right? Because all of your planning is done and your notes and all of your documents are in there, it has the context it needs, as we talked about today, to really increase the quality of the product that it creates for you. And so greatest part about this is there's a free trial link underneath this down in the description. Go click on that right now and you can go out and try it for free. And what's better than free? Free podcast, free software. It doesn't get any better than that. So go check it out and I'll talk to you guys next time.